I would like some.
It's really tight.
Incredible.
One of my best words.
Down here next to Carl.
Oh, fuck off, would you?
Oh, it's going to be one of those go where Colonel Deering has never gone before.
In the year 1984, on the last of his space program. Buzz said, ow!
He's killed Troy right at his feet.
Did you get that, Janet? Did you get a lot of that?
Yeah.
That has to be on the website tonight.
What meds is he on? Because I could use some of that.
We're selling it after the show.
Yes.
Taking
Where's the
miles
belly?
of his sweat now.
All right, gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock. We have a full room, and we're going to get started right now. How's everybody doing? Are you having a good time so far? Yeah, I'm not convinced. Are you having a good time so far? That is awesome. If you are here at Dragon Con for your very first time, raise your hand and make some noise. If you are returning to Dragon Con, raise your hand and make some noise. Now, for all of you who have been here before and have been to a Trek Track event before, how do you like our new banners? Ooh. Ooh. All right. Glad you're having a good time. Very glad that you're here. Welcome to Dragon Con. This is not my first Dragon Con by any means. My name is Eric Watts. I am your Dragon Con Director of Star Trek Programming, here for my 17th year. Thank you so much for coming. Downstairs in the
Talk to me for Christ's sake.
we have the 2009 edition of our famous.
That they're supposed to like finish up for me, but
Brian is such a troublemaker down there, causing trouble at the end. Let me recognize my hard-working staff. Without them, I couldn't do what I do up here. They A big Star Trek fan growing up in 1997, he began collecting props and costumes from the original series and acquired the original Enterprise blueprints when he interned on Star Trek The Next Generation. He went on to construct recreations of sets in an abandoned car dealership in Port Henry, New York, where he and fellow Star Trek fans gathered together to begin shooting new episodes. Trek actors George Takei and Walter Koenig acted in episodes, and original series writers D.C. Fontana and David Gerrold took on roles behind the camera as well. His sets have also been used by Star Trek Enterprise in an episode called In a Mirror Darkly, and in the professional fan film Star Trek of Gods and Men, in which James plays Peter Kirk. He also had a small part in the 2009 J.J. Abrams motion picture, Star Trek. His day job is as an Elvis impersonator. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. James Cawley.
Didn't we do that already?
Huh?
Didn't we do that already? I thought we were moving on to somebody else.
Hush. I am absolutely thrilled to introduce to you a very special guest right now. You already know who he is. His name is Mr. Gil Gerard. Best known for his starring role in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, he's going back to these roots as he joins the cast of the upcoming internet series of the same name. His latest role was in another science fiction series, Star Trek Phase 2, where he guest starred as an admiral in the episode K'Tumba, filmed in June 2009. In addition to founding his own production company, Prudhomme Productions, he guest starred in dozens of television episodes and movies and was featured in the television series Sidekicks, Nightingales, and Earth Fourth. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gil Gerard. On the other side of Mr. Cawley, we have Mr. Vic Mignogna. Did I pronounce that correctly? Mignogna? What he said?
Just Vic, how about that?
How about Vic? Vic has been acting for stage and screen since he was 8 years old, but he started his career in anime about 10 years ago as Vega in Street Fighter II. He's been in more than 100 shows and has also voiced roles in a large number of video games. He is a composer, singer, producer who has written and produced hundreds of songs for TV, radio, and CD. He sings the themes for shows like One Piece and DBGT and has produced several CDs of his own original music. In addition to anime and music, he has a degree in film and works regularly writing, producing, and directing video and film productions. He joined the Star Trek Phase 2 production team in 2008, taking on the role of an Andorian captain in enemy Starfleet. He returned to the production in 2009 as both director of K'Tumba and as the guest star, a thoroughly evil, ridged Klingon. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vic Mignogna.
Vic will be telling you where you can find those bridges later.
Boy. Next down the line, we're glad to have with us this evening Mr. Patrick Bell. Patrick is a senior production assistant for Star Trek Phase 2. He assists with set building and upkeep and improvements to the studio. Beginning with Blood and Fire, he has been portraying the first Paramount Phase 2 character added to the production, Lieutenant Zahn, a young, full-blooded Vulcan scientist who is fascinated by human beings and their culture. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Patrick Bell. Boys, are we passing notes in class again down here?
We need the bell.
On the other,
They're abusing
where's my bell? Here's my bell.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect.
On the other side of Patrick, we have Mr. Ben Alpey. Ben is a director and producer, and he has been seen on the big screen at the Fine Arts Theater in Burbank, California, the Madison Theater in Albany, New York, on television and the web. In 2006, he was brought onto the award-winning Star Trek Phase 2 web series and became a producer and second unit director for Blood and Fire Parts 1 and 2, Enemy Starfleet, and The Child. A character actor, he stars as the adorably incompetent alien starship captain Zerx in the sci-fi comedy web series Zerx Log. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ben Alpey. Next down the line is my dear friend, Mr. Carlos Pedraza. Carlos is a former writer for Star Trek Phase 2. Before joining the Phase 2 crew as an associate producer in 2005, he was the staff writer for 13 episodes and one of the producers of Star Trek Hidden Frontier, the longest-running fan-produced science fiction series on the internet. David Gerald, writer of The Trouble with Tribbles, authorized Carlos to rewrite his unproduced script for Star Trek The Next Generation, Blood and Fire, for production by Phase 2, which was released last year. This is Carlos's 5th year as a Trek program participant. We're delighted to have him again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carlos Pedraza. And rounding out tonight's panel, my good friend, Mr. Brian Holloway. Brian began his theater career at the age of 7. Now, just think of that face at the age of 7. When he appeared in a regional theatrical production of Fiddler on the Roof with his father. Since then, the acting bug has hit hard and he became a full-time commitment. After receiving his BFA in Performance Arts, he toured nationally with several theater organizations for about 7 years and could be seen headlining in productions ranging from Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing and Henry IV, Parts 1 and 2, to musicals like Big River, Man of La Mancha, Kiss Me, Kate, and Jekyll and Hyde, to name a few. He was an extra in the background of Star Trek The Motion Picture and also in the Voyager episode Nemesis. He is also the costuming director here at Dragon Con, and it's not in my notes, but you are for Phase 2, you hold the position of?
Supervisor of Special Effects Makeup.
Supervisor of Special Effects Makeup. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Mr. Brian Holloway. James, it's all yours.
It's all mine. Where do I start?
Well, we're out of time now.
Thank you for coming. You all are aware of the show, I guess, or you wouldn't be here. So I think it's more fun if we just open the floor up to you guys, don't you think, Carlos?
Sure.
Sitting on. Brian was born with a goatee, though.
Yeah.
No hair on his head. It's just
Actually, there's another Brian. This is the evil.
This is the evil.
Oh, that's the mirror.
This is Mirror Brian.
That's why you're in that funny color.
The last 4 episodes that we did when I first met James, I had no beard. I was just, now I'm involved in another production in the show, and I do Renaissance fairs. And last 4 years we've come to Dragon Con stuff. I've had the goatee, so.
He's just grown more evil as time has gone by.
Somebody over here's got their hand ready to go, right here.
Come to the IP.
Doing a fan production like New Voyages, has Paramount been easy to work with, or the royal behind?
Are they a film group?
You know, Paramount, I have to say, overall, has been really terrific. And when we first started, not so much so, they actually, going back 5.5 years, almost 6 years now, they actually called us up and said, "What are you doing?" and sicked the lawyers on us. And thankfully, the head attorney at Paramount was a huge original series fan. And she understood it. She got what we were trying to do. And, she just laid down some rules that she passed by the executives at the studio, and they signed off on it. And they basically ended up saying, "You can't profit from what you're doing. We understand what you're doing. We enjoy what you're doing. Just don't make any money. We're going to be over here, and you guys just continue to exist over there." And so it was almost a situation that they had to do. The franchise at that point was not doing well. The fans were, walking away left and right. Not to mention half my staff at that point worked on Enterprise. So, and they knew that. All of my special effects people were working on Enterprise, and so it was kind of a let's not rock the boat situation with the fans. So, but as the years have gone on, they've been great. We call them, we can talk to them, and believe me, they're on my website several times a week. So they're very well aware of what we do.
Next. This is for Vic and Gil. The episode you directed, Katumba, and you guest starred, I believe, in it.
Yep.
Comments on it? What was it like directing your own Star Trek show?
I gotta tell you guys, since the moment that
He was an animal.
that was off the set,
Were you on the set?
I was dressed funny. I was there.
Oh.
It was weird. You know what was really funny? It was funny. It was funny directing in full Klingon makeup.
He looked like Donna Summer with an infection.
Last chance for love. Disco songs were in abundance on the set. You know what? It was a dream come true. Since the day I met James, I had been so excited that somebody was doing what he has been doing. I, like many of you, grew up just eat, sleep, breathe Star Trek when I was a little boy. And, I thought I was Captain Kirk when I was, this big around and 13, 14 years old, and made my own uniforms. And so when I heard that somebody was doing this, I got so excited and made contact with James. And
He was obsessive about contacting me.
I was.
I got calls from people who wrote for Deep Space Nine saying, "This Vic Mignogna guy is trying to get."
But it was really, it's a dream come true. I am not interested in anything but being a part of something that I have loved since childhood. I'm not, I have a career in anime. I've done a lot of shows that are on Cartoon Network and Sci-Fi Channel and stuff, but I have such a deep love and joy for original Star Trek. So the chance to be a part of it is the greatest privilege of all. Tell them about being on the set when you were sober.
Kept bringing me buns and things. I didn't know.
I brought you no buns. That was a girl.
Well, it was interesting for me because I
Tell him that you.
I'm in trouble.
What
I never
did you,
really
what did you
watched
tell
Star
me
Trek.
after you put the uniform on? You walked out of the dressing room. What did you tell me? Because I remember specifically.
Go ahead. I have no idea.
He looked at me, and his. By the way, this is Janet, Gil's wife, right here. Janet is a huge. Janet is a huge Star Trek fan.
Yes, she is.
Okay? Gil is not a Star Trek. Wasn't a Star Trek fan. And we got him in the uniform, and he walked out, and he said, "God damn it, you've taken me to the dark side."
I'm on the dark side now.
He makes an amazing Starfleet admiral. Makes a great admiral, though. If you can imagine that with the uniform, is quite impressive. Quite impressive.
They made that for me. It was very nice. From the original
Yeah,
cloth. Right?
everything.
Yeah.
We spared no expense for you.
I noticed that. Sweet at the Holiday Inn.
You stayed at the Holiday Inn?
All I
Best
could eat-
Western.
All I could eat at the dollar store.
It was across the parking lot from Walmart, so it's a great location.
They have a free continental breakfast.
By the way, Carlos, I have Vic's new hentai on video for you.
I will say this seriously. I got to say this seriously. I mean, as an actor, as a professional for almost 40 years, and I told you guys this. I was really impressed with the quality of the work and the dedication of the people who are involved with the show, and it just blew me away that these people come from all over the world and give of their time for something that they care so deeply about, and they do such an amazing job. Those of you who watch the show, you should be very grateful to these people who have such a dedication and love for the show that you all love. Because I told him, I said, I can't believe that people do this for nothing. I mean, I've seen crews that get paid double overtime and don't work this hard. And it was a very impressive experience for me to be involved with all these people, except for Vic.
and Kazumba was a particularly challenging thing to do because if you followed our show, we've never beamed down, really. We've never really left the ship. We did, I think, in the second one, but it was very briefly done. And everybody always said to me, why are you doing these bottle shows? Why are you always on the Enterprise? Why don't you beam down? And my response was, I will not leave the Enterprise. I will not beam down until we can beam down and do it right. I don't want to beam down in somebody's backyard with trees and bushes, like some of the other fan films. You know, if you can't beam down and make it look like you're on an alien planet, for God's sakes, I'm not going to beam down. I'm not going to waste my time. Because everybody sitting up here will tell you that filming on location is one of the most difficult things that you can do. And so this particular story dated back to 1977. It was written for the actual Phase 2 series, and we had to update it because over the ensuing years, the Klingon Empire kind of evolved in a different direction than what was portrayed in the story. So we had to find a way to combine the stories. And luckily, we live in an area where we have access to an 18th century British fort that's been completely restored. It's all stone and, great hewn timber bridges and all this stuff. So we were able to get out and get permission and shoot down there. And we were there for 2 nights, which was insane. We started setting up at 5 o'clock in the evening. We started shooting by 7 p.m. So it was getting dark, so they had all these big lights brought in to light it up. And then both nights, we wrapped at 5 a.m. the following morning. So we literally shot overnight, then tried to sleep and come back to work. And it was really a challenging thing to do because we'd never done it. It was learn as you go. So I'm very proud of what it looks like. It's just an amazing experience to be out there. And here we are with all these Klingons everywhere you looked. Of all these, we had Klingon fan clubs show up with tremendous costumes and the headpieces and the whole 9 yards. It just came. Some came from Maryland and Florida. I mean, they just came to be a part of this thing. So it was really, really cool. And then the last night that we shot, we had Gil. So it was a great way to wrap up a fun experience, to spend the last night of it 8-10 hours with one of your childhood heroes. So it's really cool.
And in case you didn't know, Katoomba was written by John Meredith Lucas, who, if you know the original series, wrote Patterns of Force, Atlanta Troyes, I believe, and very involved. Yeah, so I mean, it was just, again, exciting. It doesn't even cover it, to be involved in something like that has such close ties to the original series. And it was a very ambitious script. We had, like he said, 50, 60 extras, Klingon makeup, location shoots at night, sets that were new sets that needed to be built that were not part of the Enterprise sets, and a lot of stuff to get done. But it was really exciting, very exciting to be part of it.
First of all, to Gil Gerard, I just wanted to say thank you, like George Takei, Walter Koenig, for lending a degree of celebrity to this effort, again, for something that we all love. Also, as far as Phase 2, I had heard some rumors about some of the stuff that's forthcoming for you guys. Had heard some rumors about a time travel episode, that's all I'm going to say. But what can you tell us about what's down the road for Phase 2?
Well, the next immediate episode that's on my calendar for Phase 2 is an episode called Mind Sifter. It was written in 1975 by a Star Trek fan named Shirley Mayeski. Most people know her as Grandma Star Trek. She ran for many years, from the 60s on, the Star Trek Well Committee. Does anybody recognize that name? Yeah. And this story was published in a novel, which was a collection of fan works called Star Trek: The New Voyages. And Shirley was a friend of mine. She passed a few years ago. And back in 89, 89, she gave me her original manuscript for the thing because she was never happy at how the editors at Bantam rewrote her story. And, I had talked way back then about doing my own Star Trek. She said, film this. And she gave it to me, and I got around to reading it, and I was stunned at the story. Those of you who haven't read it, Spock is the captain of the Enterprise. Kirk has been missing for 2 years, and he's basically lost in the past. He's in an insane asylum. Everybody's given up on him. They think he's gone. The only one that doesn't give up is Spock. And so we have them finally trying to find him and rescuing him and bringing him back and trying to get him back to the guy that they all knew that he is. So it's going to be a challenge. I've never... I'm a lunatic, I guess, in real life at times, but to actually have to go through this and film 3/4 of my scenes in a nut house, I guess I don't know if I'm looking forward to it or not. They just released the poster of it, didn't they, online? With me in a straight jacket.
It actually wasn't a staged shot either, that was him.
That's a file photo from the studio.
That was James and Bruce.
It's my office studio.
Yeah, you guys try to find that. Try to find that episode something about
You can find the story online.
And it's amazing.
It is. I read it when that book came out in the 70s, and it brought tears to my eyes. I think I was like 14 when I read it, and I remember even then thinking this would have made just an amazing episode of Star Trek, and so it's great to see that it's going to happen.
And it's called Mind Sifter. Kirk is nuts because Kor, the Klingon from Errand of Mercies, they've abducted him. They got a hold of him and they ran him through the Klingon Mind Sifter, which destroyed his mind, and then they just dumped him in the past. So that's everything in a nutshell.
I'll be done.
Yeah. Sorry, Buck.
It all takes place in the 25th century.
Hey, we have anybody else? Oh, we good? Oh, he's got something.
Is there a role for Admiral Sheehan and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
He's a bartender.
Makes sense. The Officers Club.
He's an orderly.
Obviously, even though you use a lot of volunteers, a lot of money goes into these productions.
I can't even see you. Can you?
Sure.
There we go.
Obviously, a lot of money goes into these productions, and if I'm not mistaken, you have to pay at least some amount to the actors under the SAG and the writers under the Guild. So how do you manage to secure enough funding to put these productions together, if you don't mind my asking?
I sell drugs.
You launder drug.
I launder drug money. Yeah. Listen. There is an amazing group of people that work on this show, and everybody, whether they contribute $1 or they contribute their time, things are expensive, but there's so much that's just donated to the show, and people give so much to make the show. There was a time that I was spending ridiculous amounts of money to build sets. Well, we still build sets, but not as much since we have done it all these years. We've accumulated these things. But we have a terrific group of people, and everybody contributes. Everybody that you see at this table has contributed something. And there's 200 more, Like Gil said in the beginning, they fly from all over the world. They come from Australia, the UK, Canada, Mexico, Spain. It's amazing the power that series still has to this day. And I'm talking about the original 79 episodes. That is the important part of the franchise, in my opinion. I don't care. I like Next Generation and all that, but to me, it's meaningless. The original series is the heart and soul. And when I started this project, I set out to prove that was the case. That any competent actor could play Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, and yada, yada, yada. And we did 30 million downloads, and lo and behold, Paramount figured it out, and got their finger out of their backside, and made a huge movie that's made a hell of a lot of money this past year. So I guess we proved a point. Star Trek is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in my book.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen.
John, I hope you considered, or have you considered shooting your episodes using 60 style studio lighting?
We use studio lighting. Ben, you want to take this one? You can. You know more about this than I ever would.
What we've done is we've kind of created a hybrid where we use modern equipment, but we do bring some inspiration from the original series. We do kind of our own style, but it's definitely informed by the original. And one big thing I think, and it was really something that James has always pushed for, is a lot of color. And we just try to keep that kind of color palette blazing. So it's I think one of the things that actually brought me to the show originally was how, even though they were using Home Depot lights and stuff, that when I watched the episodes, they still hit me, they still touch me, and I was like, wow, I've got to participate in this because this is something special for sure. And it really has the magic of the original series, and I think that for sure the lighting and the cinematography do contribute to that. So thanks for looking.
But we have spent a ridiculous amount of money on lighting since the early days. We have a ton of stuff that you would only find at a real movie studio. So don't think we use Home Depot lights. We don't.
But we don't use arc lights.
No. Yeah, that we don't use. We could probably hear you.
I got somebody back there.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
James, I want to tell you, I've been watching the episodes, and they're fantastic. They're the best of entertaining Jackson over USS Exeter. And I don't know if you've ever been asked this question before, but has Paramount ever thought of possibly, just possibly, taking your production to the next level, a syndicated series with you in charge of it? Because you had made the Star Trek that I grew up with. I'm roughly the same age as you. And
we're dinosaurs.
the young children that watch your episodes in my chapter are absolutely fascinated with it.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thank you.
I wish we could see you once a week in a new episode every year.
Then you all need to write the studio. basically, and say this, we would pay money for this, and so you never know. I mean, the fans, and I've said it before because I am a fan first and foremost, but when the original series was going to be canceled not once but twice, the fans saved it. It was the fan demand that caused Paramount to make motion pictures. It was the fan demand that caused them to make Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and then ultimately the new film. So the studio's not dumb. If you make your voices heard, they will listen. That's the best advice I can give you. They're very entrenched right now with J.J. Abrams and his reimagination, and rightly so. And I think that's where Star Trek is going to go for the foreseeable future. I don't think you're going to see it back on television anytime soon because they don't want to use that horrible franchise fatigue thing that they said for so long, which is ridiculous. I think you can't have enough of it if it's done correctly.
Right.
I think there was a lack of them taking responsibility for the lack of creativity in Star Trek over the last few years. They simply got lazy. The fans realized it, and they were tired of the tried and true.
But fortunately, we have you.
Well, thank you.
And we appreciate it.
I have all of you, so thank you.
The animated series, there was two things I was really intrigued by.
Can you all hear him?
Can I hear him?
Okay.
Now that you're bringing Zahn into the fold,
Sorry.
well, now that you're bringing Zahn into the fold, are we going to be pursuing, is there any pursuit toward giving us a live-action Mr. Eriks and Lieutenant Barres?
Eriks is coming up. Eriks is actually in Enemy Starfleet. He's a full CGI creation, and Vic's going to voice him. So.
Whoa!
He's in the scene. You will see.
I was going to say, I'm not doing that makeup.
Well, it's not much makeup. Vic already has the third leg.
Guilty as charged, my friend. Guilty as charged.
But I have to make the lighter
Now you know
shade
why
of
they
green.
call it science fiction.
I will have to make it a lighter shade of green, though.
I like to refer to it as a propulsion unit myself.
We're getting wrong here.
Nice nacelle.
Somebody over here with a camera.
I got a question for Vic. I was wondering, could you say something in Klingon?
Use your ghetto words.
Yeah, you know what the magic words in Klingon is? Kill them. We had a running joke on the set. The character that I play, Malkon, it's like every line he ever said ends with "kill them." So after a while, after 7 or 8, 9 days on the set, whenever somebody couldn't think of what to say, it didn't matter what scene you were shooting, you're on the bridge, you're in the transport room, it doesn't matter. You're like, kill them. It's always the best way to end any line, actually.
The funniest thing that happened on the set, I have to share with you, okay? Because I made him do this repeatedly. Yes, I made him do this repeatedly because it cracked me up over and over and over.
Well, that's about all the time we have today.
You have to understand, this is the first episode that I've ever made that the director is a fellow Trekkie. Wasn't just there to direct or to make an episode. The guy is actually a Trekkie. He speaks my language. And so we had this thing where we would just start quoting the original series and going off and doing scenes that had nothing to do with what we were filming. But Vic could do this one character from the original series that makes me pee my pants. So, with your encouragement, we got to get Vic to do this character.
You need this.
Just want to pee my pants. Oh, quit already.
Sorry, that was Ben.
Okay. Here we go. Thank you. The episode is Dagger of the Mind. The special guest star of that show is Morgan Woodward, playing this deranged doctor from the Nuthatch. So Vic can impersonate this guy to a T. So just imagine this on my sets with everybody going. You guys, go ahead, come on.
Actually, it works better when
Look at my
I'm laying on the floor.
Yes.
If I'm laying on the... No, they will never see it. They'll never see it. All right. How many of you know that episode? How many of you know that episode?
There he goes. He's going to do this.
My name is Simon Frankelder. I was the assistant.
You're an evil man. Hey, come on, is that not cool? No, but this is what you have to see. So we loved it so much that I went home and I designed a Van Gelder t-shirt with all of his crazy faces on the front and printed them and sent one to James and yes.
We have great bloopers on this one, folks.
Quick, scene change. Next question.
Yeah, my name is Steve Witt. I'm with Sci-Fi Horizons. I was fortunate enough to work with you guys on World Enough in Time.
Ah, Steve, yes. How are you, my friend? Now, you look familiar. How are you?
Well, I lost 30 pounds and shaved off the mustache.
Yeah. Jeez, good to see you.
How you doing, Carlos?
Good to see you.
No, I just wanted, Gil actually took everything that I was going to say. All right? I mean,
I'm sorry.
You are absolutely right. The level of dedication that these people show to this. But I just wanted to add in one little thing that I also heard while I was on the set. This is from one of the West Coast people. Basically what he said was this. He said, Hollywood would take twice as much time to do this. It would be over budget, and they still wouldn't manage to pull it off. That's kind of work these people do, folks.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah,
Thanks, Steve.
You know what, you guys? There is no price tag you can put on loving something. When you genuinely love something and you have a passion for it, you could pay somebody thousands and thousands of dollars and you will never get quite the work and the effort and the intensity out of someone who just plain loves something. And the people that work on this do. So money doesn't even really come into it for a lot of us because we just love being a part of it. You know, it's like I say, it was a dream. It's a dream come true for many. So you can't put a price tag on that. There are a lot of people involved with New Voyages like that.
I saw somebody over here. There's a bunch of people over here. What do you mean?
The Blood and Fire, followed the forums a little bit. There's been some people on there who get really upset with the, I guess, the gay scene.
Fuck them. I can't stand Star Trek fans who don't understand diversity. Star Trek was created to celebrate human people and their differences. Watch the episodes, that's what they talk about. And Gene Roddenberry's future, unlike some elements of the new film, Gene Roddenberry's future was all-inclusive. It included everybody. It didn't matter what color you were, what size you were, who you slept with, whatever your situation in life was, you were on the same playing field. The point was we had all moved past these kinds of prejudices. So if you don't want to see, gay people in the future, shoot yourself now. They're not going anywhere.
Example of the original series, what alien is Kirk sleeping with this week?
That's for me to know and you to watch the series. I had, one of the things that I've had to push for was to bring that bit of 60s sexism back to the show, and I'm finally getting my way. I have to admit I was a babbling idiot on set with Barbara Luna. Barbara's in Enemy Starfleet, and I think that was the actual first love scene I think I ever got to do on the show.
First kiss.
And so I actually got to kiss this woman that I've lusted after since I was 12.
And there were numerous takes.
And she kissed him back, folks. It was quite romantic.
And it's funny, we released a clip from that, and I got an email from somebody, or somebody posted on the forum or the Trek movie thing, and they were like, you think James feels weird kissing a woman that old? And I typed back, have you looked at her? Come on. Anyway.
She showed up on set with a T-shirt that said, "I slept with Captain Kirk."
And on the back it said, both of them.
Like virtually every one of the original Star Trek stars and Gil as well, I think, the shooting conditions in Port Henry, New York are not, well, they're not Hollywood. And, you know, where we shoot, the temperature inside the studio where we shoot, it's not easy. And these folks who are used to better amenities than we can provide are troopers. And it was great to watch. In some ways, the adversity brings us closer together. It bonds us together like family. And Barbara was like that almost more than anyone. She was, even on days that she didn't need to be there, she would show up, she would hang out with fans and the other cast and crew and just be very encouraging. And again, I think it's one of the things that's unique about the Phase 2 set is that it encourages that kind of bonding amongst people. So it's not just love of Star Trek, it's a dedication to this kind of filmmaking that does and has made a difference in the world, and that's you know, I think one of the proudest parts of you know, speaking for myself, but I think for everyone else too, it's one of the proudest accomplishments in our lives to know that this work has made a difference.
For sure.
Right up in front here.
I hate to be rude or disrespectful, but I've never seen a Star Trek New Voyages.
That's okay.
And so I want to find out how to.
You have to go onto the website, which is Star Trek Phase and then the number 2.com.
Okay.
And there's a you can it's called a player, I guess, right, guys? And you can see the episodes listed, and you can click on the player, and then it'll say episode whatever. And you click on the title, and you can watch it. They're streamed in HD right there, and you can just watch them on your computer.
Or you can come back at 8:30 tonight.
Tonight, yeah. Or you can stay here. We'll show you.
We're going to show one of the episodes tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, someone asked earlier if you have plans on bringing from the animated series Lieutenants Erex and Emrys, who was like this lion girl, onto the set. Just remember this documentary called About Humanimals, about humans who have themselves altered to look like animals. You know, if you were to put out a casting call for people who have had themselves surgically altered,
I would be scared.
to look like a lion woman, I mean, that would solve your makeup problems for Lieutenant Emrys.
Well, first of all, Brian would
Have
be
you
out
heard
of
of the
work.
law of unintended consequences?
Yeah, no, I don't think I could survive that. Sometimes, this is my 4th Dragon Con, and Carlos, bastard, was one of the people that Arista said, you gotta come down here, you gotta come down. And so I got to come. And I love coming down here, but every year, somewhere I run into somebody and I look at them, and 2 things go through my head. And I'm not trying to be insulting to anybody, because you never understand everybody. But sometimes I'll see a very bizarre looking individual in a costume or something. And there's 2 things that go through my head. And the first is a line from the original Star Trek series where Spock looks at a Medusa, and Shatner goes, Spock, cover your eyes! And the other thing that goes through my head is a line that Clint Eastwood used at the end of The Enforcer. When he goes to shoot the guy in the tower, he just points the, was it a bazooka?
Yeah.
Points the bazooka and he goes, you fucking freak. I find it funny. I love fandom in all its forms. But I got to tell you, I don't have the guts or the courage to do what a lot of fans do when they come to conventions. I'm amazed at the lack of inhibition. I'm just shocked. I mean, I'm a fairly thin guy, but I can't picture myself running around in these really revealing costumes, so it just blows my mind. And but again, that's part of this great, it's part of the great diversity that we have as human beings that Gene Roddenberry so loved, you know. And it's when you come to these events, that's the, I guess, you know, my mind flips around and I go, oh my God, everybody is just so into anime and they're so into vampires and all this stuff, you know. And so when they get together, much like when we film, there's all this creative energy in one place. And this is how it manifests, and it is just an amazing thing to sit back and go, wow. So
there are many things that we have talked about doing as far as makeup is concerned, and like for all the new advances and techniques in makeup that have been done since the 60s, I will give James credit in the fact that in many respects we're having to reinvent the wheel, because he is absolutely dedicated to the look and the feel of TOS. And we come in there and go, but well, we could do this, and we could do. He's like, but that's not TOS. I mean, there are 1,000 ways that we could make it look like next generation stuff, but that's not what we're going for. And it's really difficult sometimes to have to reinvent something that hasn't been done for 30 or 40 years. But by the time James gets done, and by the time we have our meetings and stuff like that, he absolutely gets the look he's going for, and God love him, we're able to recreate the 60s, and it is absolutely phenomenal to watch the way he and the rest of the crew up here put their time and money into this. And you know, there are ways we can do new stuff, but we're not trying to reinvent, we're trying to recapture. And you know, God love him for what he does, because we're getting some of the best stuff that we can work with, and we're using new materials, creating an older look. You know, when Vic came on and did the Andorian Captain, you know, they said we need a pair of antenna. And right away we thought, oh, the Enterprise antenna, you know. And we ended up creating, what hot glue is what we did?
You ended up creating.
Yeah, we ended up taking a mold of, one of our prop guys created this mold of one antenna. And I ran it back real quick, took some plaster and created the mold, and I said, what can we fill it with? And we made the antenna out of hot glue. I just squeezed hot glue into it for like 2 hours. And when it cooled off, I trimmed it off with a knife and sanded it down a little bit. We made a pair of those, and it worked.
Yeah, I still have the scars right here.
And then afterwards, someone came up and said, "Did you think about using Expandaphone?" And we went, might have been lighter, easier, and we needed like 3 sets, and we got 1. So yeah, that would have saved a multitude of problems. But it was like midnight, 1 o'clock, and it was like, get the job done, do what you have to do, and that's what these people did.
2 o'clock?
Yeah, it was by the time we got done. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 when we shot the scene. Yeah. And you know, from a production standpoint as well, if I may say so, the goal is to create original series, right? TOS. A lot of directors and people that shoot a lot, we can come up with plenty of amazing camera angles and think of really great ways to cover this, but the goal, at least for me, is not to do that, but to make it feel and look and seem like the original series. So I went back and started watching episodes, and there were particular shooting styles. There was a very, very, very clear shooting style, the way they used to do things back then. There are angles that those of you that are original series fans, you know those camera angles. You remember where that camera was positioned and just, you know, what you could see in that shot, and you remember these particular shots and style of shooting. So, like with makeup, the goal is not necessarily to do all these new things that have never been done before, but it's to recapture the magic, whether it's a makeup magic or shooting magic or an editing or a costume magic that they had in the original series that we love so well.
Now, having said that, it's also important to understand that we have incorporated new technologies in a lot of the filmmaking that goes into Star Trek Phase 2. That's frankly one of the ways that we are the low cost, you know, generally that we do. So, for example, all of the panels on the bridge now, as of this summer, right?
As of this, yeah, they're
are all LCD panels, so they can project anything on them. They're not just the blinky lights of the past. So, you know, so while yes, we're, you know, Phase 2 has worked very hard to recreate the spirit, the feel of the original series. You know, make no mistake, new things have happened in the way that this show is produced that enables it to be done at a reasonable cost, and that, you know, has stretched the storytelling to enable Phase 2 to do things that in the 60s could not have been done. So, So it is always a constant balance between those two things, making sure that the show stays true to the original feel and look and style, and certainly its heart, but that, where new things can be done to stretch, to make Gene Roddenberry's vision even greater or more easily understood. That's happened too.
And certainly with the sets, for instance, for the sets that James and so many others have helped you create, we were able to do shots that we haven't, that you would never see in TOS just because there was no wall there. Or
Well, cameras are also much smaller too, allowing you guys to move these things around in different ways, which is kind of cool. We talk about updating and the changing. That was one of the issues with Katoomba. We all know that the Klingons didn't look like the Klingons today, but we used the story, and some of the other things that have transpired in the filmed history of the show to do it, so that we could finally show the bumpy-headed Klingons on the old series, and it kind of worked out really cool. So yeah, I like sneaking a lot of the stuff, and then since we are inevitably going towards the feature film era, we have to show the progression of things, because I'm one of these people that has to follow canon. I'm not one of these people that can just ignore what's come before on the show.
The little gee whiz moment I had was on Katoomba, just to kind of give credit to Vic himself. We're on Katoomba, and I came in a week after the initial shooting had begun. I could only be there for the second half. And I was watching the dailies, and James is sitting in a chair, and he's locked onto this, and he and Vic are going through things. And you have crew people in the background as they saw certain camera angles come up. You would have crew people standing there going, da, 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 da. You just recognize it. You expect that music because it looks that close to what they did in the original 60s.
We also, the DP on the thing insisted with shooting with this Red 1 camera, which is an absolute nightmare. It's, unless you're going to project it in IMAX, it's so much data, and it took forever to do transfers and all this kind of thing. But I'm telling you this because Vic spent the last 2 nights talking with our computer guy and sitting in his hotel room here. They were trying to encode the footage, download it, so that Vic could cut together a very rough and quick and dirty promo for you folks tonight. So you're going to see some shots from Katoomba for the first time. Nobody's ever seen them anywhere. So you're going to see them. While I have the floor of ours, I want to bring up the fact that we have this dedicated group of people that have come together to make Star Trek, and we've never been able to profit from Star Trek. We promised the studio that we wouldn't, and we've held to that. But we've spent a lot of money. We've developed a lot of talents. I think we've watched people grow. We've enjoyed each other's company, and we finally were able to obtain a license for an established property. And we start shooting on that in 2 weeks, and the property is Buck Rogers in the 25th century, which is why this guy's sitting next to me. So we're going forward with an all-new series of adventures based on the original concept of Buck Rogers. And Gil is my partner in this. He's an executive producer. He's helping me with setting the tone and the standard, and I called him, didn't reach him for about 6 months. Mm-hmm. And finally he called me back and we talked, and I told him that I wouldn't make the show without him, and I meant that, and I still mean that. And in the pilot, both Gil and Aaron are playing Buck's parents in the pilot, and then they will go on to play a different role through the magic of science fiction. They'll be series regulars, so I think it's incredible that we're going to get to see these guys back in front of the camera and working on Buck Rogers after 30 years.
Okay, when you say original Buck Rogers, are you talking about his Buck Rogers or
No, sir.
Larry Buster Crab's?
We're talking about the original comic strip Buck Rogers as envisioned by Philip Francis Nolan and John F. Gilley.
That was like way before my
Yes, it starts
Mine too.
with a 20-year... No, it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
It starts with a 20-year-old Buck Rogers. He's a young pilot in World War I, and the adventure unfolds and goes. So it's going to be very cool. We start shooting some scenes in 1918 in a couple of weeks, and then we'll wrap and pick up in a few more months in the spring, and we're going to be shooting a full-on World War I battle in Pennsylvania at a reenactment site.
How can we follow the new series? Is it a new website or
www.buckrogersbegins.com. It's online now, and we're starting to update so people can see the artwork and the new spaceships and all that stuff in the next few weeks.
Kirk is such an iconic character.
He's a god.
A lot of people who watch it sort of have, Shatner in their head or their picture of Kirk. How, when you decided that you were going to play Captain Kirk, did you approach that without aping William Shatner or trying to, did you want to take it in your own direction? Or,
Well, for me, the only Captain Kirk is William Shatner. You can't replace him. Really. He created that character. It was just a bunch of words on paper until he, gave it life. And I knew that for me, there was no way that I could approach the character or play the character without bringing something of William Shatner to it. Sometimes I get accused of imitating William Shatner. I don't think I do. But I intentionally do one scene in every story that we do. I try to do it one scene exactly like he would do it. And it always seems to work, and everybody always seems to pick up on it. And some people love it, some people hate it. When we did Blood and Fire, and we screened it here last year, there was a great moment where Kirk finds out that his nephew is gay, and he's going to get married, and he walks away. And Kirk looks at Spock, and when I read the script, it was a no-brainer. I thought, oh my God, this is the Shatner line. And David Gerrold insisted. He said, if you don't read this like William Shatner, we're dead. You have to do this like William Shatner. Some people loved it, some people hate it. I love it. When I got that line, I thought, how can I not? I mean, has anybody seen the episode?
Yeah.
So the one scene is the nephew comes out to his uncle and he walks away after saying, I want you to marry me and my partner. And Kirk is a little dumbfounded, not that his nephew is gay, but that why didn't I know that, any of this, and why didn't I know that he was on this ship for somebody else who's not here because he wants to be around me, all this stuff. And Kirk turns around and looks at Spock and he says, Spock, am I the only one who didn't know? It's just a great moment. It plays both ways, and it's just a great moment. And I enjoy the Shatner aspect of the character. I really do, because he takes a lot of crap for the way he played the part. But he really was brilliant in that role.
George Takei actually says that he channels him too well.
That's just decay.
Yeah. Are there any other Star Trek stars that are expressed interest in being in your productions?
I certainly hope so. We've been talking with Bob Picardo, who's dying to come on the show. He has a specific idea for a character, and we've got somebody working with him to try to get the story that he's looking for. There's a lot of them that I would love to have. I actually talked to Dominic Keating last year. Great guy, wants to come on. Paul McGillian from Stargate wants to come on. So there's some really cool people who I'm looking forward to possibly working with in the future. It's an exciting time for us.
Can you talk a little about your cameo?
I could talk a lot about it. I mean, what was it like to be on the set? First of all, it was a complete surprise to even be asked, and I thought that the sets were amazing, but I didn't like them for the Enterprise. To me, it didn't feel like the Enterprise because it was so Apple iPod over, modern, not the classic Star Trek. I love the cast, terrific folks. I have nothing but wonderful things to say. I love Carl Urban. Patrick was actually with me on the set, and Carl Urban came over. He had heard that I was the internet guy. He came over and wanted to talk to me about classic Star Trek and how excited he was about taking on the role. And he said, "Look, James, I even got the ring." So he had DeForest Kelley's pinky ring, and so he was very much doing, I thought, a wonderful tribute and impersonation of DeForest Kelley, whereas the other actors were kind of doing their own thing, and it's almost this weird kind of thing. He was so McCoy, and the others were kind of new to me, but they were wonderful people. I have only the best of things to say about J.J. Abrams. I've never met a more gracious, talented, funny. I mean, just what a hell of a nice guy.
Sorry, I was talking to Vic.
And He's terrific, you know, and they deserve all the success they get. I didn't enjoy the finished piece as much as I had hoped to. I just have real issues with the plot. But
There was a plot?
there was a plot. But I'm very pleased that the movie has made a ton of money and that it has basically brought Star Trek back and it's given it all its luster. And I've been to Dragon Con now, this is my 4th time. And I am blown away by the number of classic Star Trek uniforms I've seen people wearing. That's wonderful.
Richard's rule.
Vic has to leave us, but
Yeah, I have another event I've got to go to, but thank you guys so much for allowing me to join you, and we will certainly look forward to hearing and talking more with you about new voyages, and thanks so much for joining us this week.
and Vic has to leave us also, folks.
Because I'm getting home myself.
I see somebody.
Yeah, did you like forget you had killed Chekhov?
I can't hear you, sweetie.
Oh, did you forget you had killed Chekhov or what?
No, I never wanted to kill Chekhov.
Okay.
That was DC Fontana wanted to kill Chekhov. I had to find a way to fix it.
There is actually another cutout with a alternate ending.
Oh my God, speaking of red shirts.
What did it take to get here? Oh my God.
You don't want to know, man.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Hi, James. Scott from the Two True Freaks podcast.
From the what?
Two True Freaks podcast.
Two True Freaks?
I got 2 quick questions for you.
Okay.
Do you do podcast interviews?
I certainly do.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right.
The other one is, I feel you on the new Star Trek, and I'm wondering how you personally reconcile it. Do you just see it as a completely different alternate universe?
It is. It's apples and oranges, and I think you can if you look at it that way, you can enjoy it. You know, I don't think it's a bad film. I just think it had a terrible plot. You know, as far as Star Trek is concerned, I thought it had things that just didn't make sense to me. Like 2 things that bugged me. Here's this massive Romulan ship in orbit around Vulcan, and they don't know it's there. There's no Vulcan security anymore. They don't have ships to protect themselves. That really, that was one thing that bugged me.
No planetary defense?
The other thing that bugged me, I guess that it was very glaring, is if Scotty can now beam people great distances like that at warp drive, what the hell do we need starships for? Just things that didn't make sense in the history of the franchise. But, they were going for their own thing. They're trying to make Star Trek relevant and cool to a younger group of people, and I think they succeeded. So,
There's actually a third one that we don't disagree with. It's the Spock Uhura.
Oh, yeah, I don't like the Spock Uhura thing either.
So you think at the same rate that there's an attempt to almost take Star Trek from us
No.
and give it to the cool kids?
Absolutely not. I think you have to understand Paramount is a business. They're a company that's in business to make money. And, everything changes. Everything cycles. Things change. How many interpretations of Batman have we lived through?
Oh,
Superman? Okay? You have to understand that there can be multiple versions of anything. And just because you like one doesn't mean you have to like the other, but it doesn't mean that they have to be at war with one another either. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, Paramount has taken nothing away from you.
No.
Everything that has happened, you still have. And if not for J.J. Abrams, that's all you'd ever have. So
I don't believe that either.
Well, I mean,
I don't, because somebody
at
else,
least for a while,
somebody else
longer.
would have come along and they would
Yes.
do their own spin on it, regardless. It might not have been what JJ did, but somebody would have eventually been saying, they would have been hired to say, okay, you're going to do another Star Trek,
Sure.
whether
But we
they
don't know
follow
what
the
it
old
is.
mold or not.
We don't know if it had been
Exactly.
good.
We don't know.
It might have died then.
As long as it wasn't, never mind, we'll see.
I've got a few points about the new film. First, and he's not a bad actor.
Well, can we hang on a second? I don't want to turn this into Star Trek 11.
Yeah, we had 2.5 hours of that yesterday, so.
Yeah, I really don't want to do that. I actually was supposed to be on a panel last night, but I didn't know that I was supposed to be on this panel last night. And I'm not here to bash the film. Please don't, misunderstand me. I enjoyed the film, but there was a lot about it that, plot-wise, that I didn't like. For everything I didn't like, I can find something that I did, okay? It wasn't a perfect film, but neither was The Wrath of Khan or The Motion Picture or any of that stuff. Perfection was the original series. That's as much bad as I want to say.
I was just watching one of the episodes. I can't remember the name of it. There was a character in there who was almost like a cube.
Trelane.
Right. Are you going to bring him back?
No, probably not. Probably not. I think that was a great story, but I think it was self-contained. I think he was a spoiled brat who got disciplined, and that was the end of the story. One of the things that I don't want to get caught up into, which we sort of did in the beginning, is I don't want to be doing sequels to old episodes. To me, there's plenty of new stories to be told. There's plenty of places to go in the universe and the galaxy, and that's what we need to do. You know? I'm not opposed to bringing back a character if the story that we have warrants it, which brings me to this before I forget. I've had a script now for 2.5 years or more, probably almost 3 years now, that was written by a terrific Star Trek writer named Howard Weinstein. And my problem with it was that it was very ambitious, and I asked for some changes. The changes finally came back to where I think we can handle the story. And it involves a character from the original series, and one of the problems with this character is finding the right character to play him. So I promised somebody that I was going to put them on the spot tonight, so I don't know where he is. Where's Eric Watts? Is he gone?
He's out there at the door. He's in the hallway.
You know, it's his big moment.
Somebody yell.
Somebody ding, because...
Ding.
If you ding that...
Is he coming?
Eric, that's your ding.
There he comes. You better come running. So I'm going to have to backpedal because he didn't hear 3/4 of this. Eric, come up here, please, sir. Mr. Watts. Slinking.
10 minutes.
He's slinking. I promised you earlier that I was going to ask you something in front of an audience tonight, didn't I?
No, you didn't say in front of an audience. You
Oh,
said you were going to answer something later.
Oh, well, that's in front of an audience.
That may be a different question.
Yes. We had a script. I was just telling the audience.
Let me check something.
We have had a script for about 3 years that's been kind of problematic, and I've had to have it rewritten so that it's something that we could actually produce. It was just too big in scale. And it involves a character that is very difficult to cast, and it's been a rough road, but it's one of these things that I would like to start getting on a calendar. And in that vein, I would like you to play a part on Star Trek Phase 2. I mean, literally play a part, since you are such a character anyway. Don't you think? So, take a moment. I would like you to play
Scotty's very Ewok character.
We'd like you to play a very important character because I think you have the bearing, you have the ability to play this part. I would like you to play Harcourt Fenton Mother.
First time he's ever been speechless.
Can you do it?
This is not a joke.
No joke. No joke.
For real.
For real.
Let me think of it. Okay. Are there any children in the room?
Yes.
Oh. Let me rephrase my response. I would absolutely love to.
We will send you the script when we get back to New York.
I am honored and privileged, and I would love it. Thank you.
Consider it done. Your Harcourt Fenton Mother.
Oh my God.
The only bad part of the story is Stella. still trying to decide whether I want you or Joe Belushi to play Stellan, Carlos.
I think Joel has the hair for it.
Anyway, so that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you need to sit down?
Do you need a moment? Perhaps a tissue?
William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, Patrick Stewart, and Harry Mudd. This has been a good weekend for me.
After 17 years,
I'm honored and privileged, would love to do it, and can't wait to get up there again.
Cool.
Did we mention earlier, I think I may have left it out, I did do an introduction for myself. I had the honor and the privilege of being on the set for the World Enough and Time episode. I served as a production assistant when George Takei was on the set, and in all of my many years of being a hardcore Star Trek fan, it was one of the most absolutely wonderful experiences in my life. So, James, I'm absolutely thrilled.
Thanks. I know you can do the job. I've seen you.
So does that mean next year I can be on my own panel?
Sure.
Yay!
Wow, fabulous. What time do we start the show?
Well, anytime you want, but I need to talk about it for a second.
10 minutes of break time.
All right.
Well, can I talk to these folks about it, or do I have to wait until we?
We're going to have to move this banner out, and we'll set up the film screen behind you. So go ahead. We're going to be working around you, but we'll get that set up.
Eric, since he wants to talk about it.
The first one is just a little clip, just some little pieces of the episode Kitumba that were hastily put together to try to give you an idea of some of the things that we shot. It's very quickly done, but we wanted to share some of it with you. So we're going to do that first, and then when that's done, we'll come back and we'll talk to you about the other things you're going to see tonight.
Next time on Star Trek Phase 2.
A massive attack on the Federation is imminent. Remember when the Organians said that we would end up working together despite our many differences?
Prepare all the course for Kronos on my mark. Aye, sir. Weapons now.
There's no place in my plan for a weak, pampered boy.
If you are the one chosen by Kishore, then you must speak with the Kitumba alone. I can arrange it.
Kill them.
It looks like the Klingon fleet.